welcome back, everybody. Another episode of COVID Questions, and specifically today, we're grateful to have Jess Jewitt, who's the medical director of the ER for Cache Valley Hospital, and you've got Tanner Dance, Ryan Bohm here from Core Capital. So let's jump right into it. Jess, tell me, obviously, COVID-19 has thrown us all for a loop. Completely changed our lives. You're in the medical profession. This is your baby. Give us an update specifically for Cache Valley. Obviously, we've seen stuff in the news from Italy and Detroit and New York City.
Sure.
But as it pertains to Cache Valley, what's it done the last couple of months?
So Cache Valley's been a little bit of a different story, and everyone that lives here can attest to that. We luckily have had a lower incidence than a lot of these other places. New York has definitely been its own situation where they got into trouble fast. Places like New Orleans were similar, and there were a lot of moves made to protect people, statewide moves, nationwide moves, and I think we benefited a great deal from those moves being in place here. And we really have been lucky, and I really think people in the Valley did a good job to be conscious of what was going on and to be thoughtful about everyone around them. And we've done a good job to, for the most part, so far, avoid a lot of the pitfalls that we were worried about. Initially, when this came out, the issue was a exponential jump that the medical field wasn't going to be able to handle. And New York has seen some of this. It can become a disaster quickly. Mm-hmm. The hospital systems in the valleys, and the one I work for, I was a huge part in a vast amount of preparation that we made to get ready, and disaster planning all the way up to what we would have done if things got really bad. We made quick moves to make sure the hospital was clean, that we were screening people appropriately as they come in, and that we had a safe environment so that people could be seen for their emergencies. And throughout the whole of this pandemic so far, we've been ready and willing to take care of the public for COVID and for any other emergencies. We were conscious about being safe and taking a step back with backing off of elective surgeries. Things are starting to look better. A lot of the slowdown in some ways was so that we would be prepared to go forward. And we're ready at that point, and the hospital systems are starting to open back up. We're working our way through some of our emergent surgical cases and starting to move on closer to elective cases. The hospital is always ready for any other emergency, and it's good to know, at least from my side, that I feel safe there going to work there, and I feel safe for my patients being there too. I think with the practices we have in place, that's one of your lower likelihood places to run into problems there. The incidence in the Valley has been relatively low, but it's still a concern. There's always concern that we'll have outbreaks and then things will pop up and get worse. The hospital is in the same boat as everyone else. We've had an economic downturn. We've had volume downturns that have been hard to deal with. We've had to shuffle employees around and have them be screeners where they're normally an OB nurse or security doing screening, or everyone participating in an appropriate role, but maybe in a different type scenario to try and keep people at work. The HCA that I work for went to bat quite a bit for their employees and had a specific pay scheme to be able to pay their employees. Having to push multiple people or big crowds into places, that's going to be an interesting process to see how we're going to make that happen. And there's a lot of things to still kind of figure out. And there's going to be a lot of information that'll come out as we learn, because it's a lot easier to learn retrospectively than right in the middle of it.
Because obviously you're talking about, this has completely changed your world. Are there some silver linings or some efficiencies or things? I mean, a lot of companies as we talk to clients and things where they might be, furloughing or laying off 25% of their people, they might be bringing in technology. It's really created an environment where you have to adapt. And certainly
Absolutely.
your profession has been, maybe the forefront of that. But are there things that you were forced to do that have been implemented that you think are probably something that's going to stay, that's going to be better, right? Beneficial for your business moving forward?
There's been a movement towards some telemedicine options that I think are good options. We were already utilizing quite a bit of that. It's hard to find some specialists in our valley, and at Cache Valley Hospital, we have a great program with telemedicine with neurologists that works really well. So we had a lot of that in place, and a lot of that got bolstered up a little bit in preparation. Some other efficiencies, I really, as CMO for the hospital, I really love the fact that infectious disease is just on the forefront of everyone's minds. If you look, just the incidence of flu just dropped off the map. And I think a lot of that's because people are being cognizant of good hand washing, good hygiene, good infectious disease practices that were out there before, and really protect us from a lot of other diseases, other viruses, other bacteria. And I think if we can keep those practices in place, we'll have better outcomes with surgeries, we'll have better outcomes with other processes, and the community will be healthier as a whole.
That's interesting you bring that up. I hadn't really thought of it. From our perspective, I'm always looking at the economic impact of what's happened, shelter in place, business drawdown, et cetera. But I hadn't really considered how the shelter in place, hand washing, those things you mentioned are really beneficial for these other things that we usually deal with. Like you're saying, flu and probably common cold.
But within medicine itself, it's been a good relook at the whole process for disaster response, infectious disease, and also in some ways how we prioritize things. And it's been nice to work with a company that's really done a good job in every aspect, having kind of being a smaller community-based hospital, but having a piece in a large hospital-based corporation that has a lot of connections and a lot of backing behind it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, and it sounds like Cache Valley Hospital and what you've been doing is preparing ahead of time so you guys could have more successful outcomes and be prepared for what could happen. Right. And,
yeah.
I guess we wanted to ask you too, what's kind of, what's something that you learned from this through your profession and what you've experienced?
Being prepared helps you be a good leader and lead not by fear, but with a good knowledge base, and knowing what you're dealing with allows you to kind of lead your team well, focusing on what's really important, thinking about what's essential, how can we best take care of our patients.
Obviously, we're starting to come out of quarantine, phase one, a couple phases to go. I mean, in terms of advice for people, what's something you'd say, okay, you're starting to come out of your cocoon, you're going back to work maybe. What's a little bit of advice that we can all practice that'll help this, have the curve stay flattened, whatever, not have these outbreaks? What would you say to people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having a good understanding of what it's going to look like will help. And that's somewhat the hard part. I think Dr. Dunn, our state epidemiologist, has done a great job. I think our governor has done a good job. I think they will move in a stepwise fashion that makes sense. I expect some of the more semi-rural to rural areas stepping back and getting back to business a little bit better and a little bit quicker. Now that comes with a caveat that if outbreaks happen or things happen, we may be taking a step back. So I think people have to understand that it's not a free-for-all, run out and kind of go crazy. This will have to happen in stepwise fashions, and we'll have to be kind of watching what's happening with the availability within the hospitals. a lot of the things that were done were to flatten the curve. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have any less cases. It's just spreading it out more over time and allowing the hospitals to be prepared. The hospitals are prepared now. When we're opening things up and things are going really smoothly and really well, we're very well prepared. But as things move forward, if there are epidemiological outbreaks that are a problem, the leadership's in place to help us kind of take a step back. So going forward, I think just be cognizant of what's going on around you, what's going on with your local and state government, and be a willing participant. You know, if they're asking you to participate in a certain way, they're doing it because they have your health and your best benefit and interest.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate the advice. Appreciate the perspective. You know, thank you for what you guys do. You guys are on the front lines. You're sacrificing, you're putting your own health in jeopardy for all of us, for our benefit. And we appreciate that, knowing that, you know, hopefully none of us do get sick, but if we do, we know
Absolutely.
that there's things in place, people in place, and you guys are sacrificing for us. So we really, really appreciate that. Thank you, Dr. Jewitt, for taking some time. I know you're busy, and appreciate it.
No problem.